One of the greatest people in the world is back on our YouTube channel. He's terrific. He's a good friend. Glenn Hudson worked with our team a long time ago. He's home. He's thriving. We've been texting. I said, I'd love for you to come back on our channel and talk about your journey through the criminal justice system. Let's start to the end. Where are you right now in the journey?
I am home. I'm off home confinement. I'm just on federal probation, but back working full time a business, and home from prison. So very excited and back with my family.
Well, a lot of people will say you can't run or contribute to a business from prison. Glenn is a wonderful example of how you can contribute and grow while understanding policy. We may touch on that in our video. To learn more about these things, you should join our weekly webinar every Monday at 1 p.m. Pacific. We don't pitch, we don't sell, we just want to educate. So now we know where you are on the end. Let's take us back all the way to the beginning when you were a federal defendant. You were charged with what sort of crime, and what were your guidelines at your sentencing hearing?
I was charged with a conspiracy for healthcare fraud. The prosecutor asked for 60 months at my sentencing hearing. The judge sentenced me to 48 months in federal prison, and that began the journey.
I know you reached out to our team before you were sentenced, and I know you worked to try to influence the judge to show why you shouldn't get 60 months in prison. Do you think, without sounding too promotional and how great you think we are, which I'm always grateful that you say that, do you think you doing the lion's share of the work and trying to create for the probation officer and judge influenced the ultimate sentence?
Absolutely, 100%. Without being too promotional, but you guys gave the framework. You guys laid the foundation. It was still up to me to do the work. Right now, I'm sitting in the library in a soundproof study room that I spent a ton of time in preparing when I was preparing to go to prison. Um, the steps you guys gave me to take to prepare as far as everything from putting the story together, from continuing to work, just all the foundational steps you guys gave me. I had to implement those things, but it definitely had a an outcome on the judge's sentence at my sentencing.
Let's talk about preparing for a sentencing hearing. There are some defendants, including me, some days struggle to get out of bed, to brush your teeth, to function. You wanted to go about this, you wanted to go down a different path. You wanted your spouse to be very involved in your preparation. She was on our calls. You wanted her to know how we could hold you accountable, how she could hold you accountable, and you still got up and you went to your gym. Even if you got the 60 months, thankfully you didn't. Talk about the value of living with dignity and knowing you were doing all you could to prepare.
Yeah, I think that's a big part of it. You know, anybody that's going through a difficult time where you're preparing to go to prison, you know, you don't know what's going to happen. It's so easy to be froze in the moment and just depressed or have anxiety and not move. You know, but I just found it important to take actionable steps to hopefully prepare for the hopefully get the best outcome that I could. And I think by, you know, involving my wife, involving my family, involving people that are involved in my business, to let them know everything that was going on, what I was doing, how I was preparing. It invigorated me, it invigorated others around me. But it's just a process of moving forward and not sitting still and just taking actionable steps that can hopefully lead to a better outcome. And I think with anything that we do, we put intention behind it, and we're genuine, and we really approach things from a conscious perspective. I think that we can definitely influence the outcome of a bad situation.
As you're going through this process, everyone watching, I want you to, it's one thing to say you're going to do something and another to actually do it. We're all guilty of that. I know that I am. And I share that because if you want your spouse or your family to be involved, understand the commitment that follows, right? We're dealing with a minor issue in our community right now where someone went to prison, the spouse and people were involved in the process. And the person said, I'm going to do this. I'm going to write. You can hold me accountable. I'm going to document my journey on prison professor talent, as Glenn did. You can hold me accountable. And then at times you go to prison. It's a hopeless environment, very depressed. The reality of the situation sits in. And many of the promises, they've all gone by the wayside. And now the family reaches out and they're like, well, what's happening? He's not doing it. I understand. and it's creating a disconnect. So make sure if they're involved that you follow through on what you say you're going to do. You touched on work. I think working is essential to not just to make money, to feel good, contribute, but also it allows you to build a record as a law-abiding citizen. So as I understand it, you began creating your gym before you were even sentenced to prison. If that's true, can you touch on how you began to build that business as a defendant?
Yeah, so I had my gym, and then this situation popped up, and so when digesting, an indictment, when digesting, I could be going to federal prison, I began diligently thinking about, okay, if my sentence is this, what does that mean? So I just began preparing, literally, for my boxing and fitness gym. I created a big 3-ring binder that I prepared for my coaches. I prepared for my team at the gym, and essentially was workouts and things they could do on a weekly basis. And I made it for 2 years, literally workouts and programs for 2 years they could follow on their own with me not being there, to keep the business going, to keep things moving forward. And it was very time consuming, but I did it sitting in this room, sitting here right now in the library. This is over a year of preparation as well. So, but it definitely paid off.
So here's a good lesson for all defendants. It can feel overwhelming when you catch a case, to use some prison parlance. I'll take you back to prison for a moment. When you catch a case, it's very overwhelming and it's easy to focus on what you're losing. You have the releases and you're hiring lawyers and the reputation and the money and career. It's devastating and it can be hard to get back on track if you focus on everything you need to accomplish. What Glenn did well, he said, okay, I'm just going to write a plan today and I'll write another one tomorrow. And if you could just, it's incredible if you just say, I'm going to work 6 hours a day and do nothing else, how much you can actually get done. No social media, no wasting time, just 6 hours a day, how much you can accomplish. And I think the benefit of him doing that, people who worked in his gym who trusted him, it's a natural thing to think, what's going to happen to me if he goes to prison? Am I going to lose my job? How will this impact me? So by leading and creating, it gave them comfort that we're going to be sustainable. This gym will continue to thrive while I'm in custody. Let's talk about that for a moment. So they wanted 60, you got 48 months in prison. Where were you designated to prison?
I was designated to Beaumont Federal Prison Camp in Beaumont, Texas.
And let's talk about Beaumont for a few minutes. Can you give us some insights into life at Beaumont, your experience? I know you got off to a productive start. There's nonsense in all of these prison camps, but give us a couple of minutes on your adjustment in prison.
I was just talking to my wife this morning about the day that I self-surrendered, and just, the anxiety leading up to that, and then arriving at the prison camp. And I got there an hour early, and the guard told me, "Hey, listen, take this last hour and be with your family, because when you get in here, it's you're not going to see them for a while, right?" So, it was a huge adjustment. It was difficult. Just the whole prison experience in itself, but at the same time, I felt I really felt confident about at least my plan I put in place for prison. I walked in there with a plan that I had prepared for, that I had written, that I had given to my wife, given to those close to me, and so I had a plan going in, which made it better, but it still was a big adjustment.
So listen to everything. He went in with his release plan. He shared it with his family, which would detail what he's going to do in prison. Of course, he did it. He shared it with his case manager, but also there's something profound. He had some anxiety about that first day. I think we all would. I know I did. But you should understand how fully Glenn prepared, and he still had anxiety. He attended all of our webinars. He worked with me, with Michael, with Joseph, with other people on our team, and he still had anxiety. Imagine if you don't do any of that preparing or planning or creating. Besides, watching our videos is a little, it's a start, but the implementation and creating is where everything changes. So you're in prison, you're at Beaumont. Now, I know you were pursuing the drug program. Of course, everyone watching, he disclosed it properly in his probation report, nothing made up. His lawyer asked for it, the judge recommended it. I know you went to a prison 10 hours from your home. I know they sent you to Beaumont. That wasn't the goal. They didn't have the drug program there. So walk us through or they might have, it was closing. Walk us through what happened at Beaumont and how you ended up at Texarkana.
Yeah, so I was at Beaumont, and literally, about a month before I was supposed to start the program was shut down.
Yes, classic BOP, disarray, better than ever.
Yes. And so immediately, I went through, which turned to be a 6 month process in order to be transferred to a facility that had the program. And I just remember really quickly. I remember attending the webinars on the weekly webinars, and I remember hearing so many guys talk about their preparation, talk about they got these sentences and how much time they did in their sentence, and ones that were very successful. And I didn't know if that was really possible, but once I put the plan together, and once I got in, and once I started really working the plan, I became very excited. I wasn't devastated that the program got shut down in Beaumont because I knew I would be transferred to another place. But me having a plan, like, it didn't deter me, right?
It's one thing to have the plan. It's another thing to continue to implement the plan. And I'm going to
Yes,
say it again. If you're going to create a plan, you've got to follow through on it. If you're going to create a narrative for a judge, the end of that narrative should lay out a vision of what you're going to do moving forward. If you do it, you're authentic. If you don't, you're just going to confirm how they already perceive you. You don't follow through on what you say you're going to do. Consider that as you create for really cynical people. So you end up, it takes a while. I remember we have these communications while you're in prison. You eventually get to Texarkana.
yes.
And how did you get there? Did they make you go through shackles and chains or could you furlough there?
Could not furlough there. They had a no furlough program. And so that in itself, okay, that in itself, I remember reading Michael Santos' book, Conquering a 45-year prison sentence. And he was telling the stories about how when he was being transferred from prison to prison. And one of my favorite all-time movies is Con Air
Mhm.
with Nicolas Cage. But when I was a kid or younger, I didn't realize that was really an organization that actually transfers
Mhm.
prisoners to different prisons. And so I got picked up at 2 o'clock in the morning on a bus, shackled, ankles, handcuffed, and sent to a private landing strip, essentially, and essentially loaded Con Air, flew in Con Air 4 different times.
So for everyone watching this, BOP, they're closing prisons. Make sure you ask for a prison of your, hopefully that's closest to your home. If you're going to pursue the drug program, ask for a prison that has the drug program. Like it's suspended right now at Sheridan. Someone's got sentenced last week. They're like, we asked for Sheridan, mistake. They don't have it. Some lawyers will see, well, Lompoc has the drug program, but it's in the low, not the camp. And it's like, well, that's a mistake. You try to undo that because the BOP can now send this person to the camp that doesn't have the program. Now they may get shipped across the country. So these are preparations you should go through. By the way, everyone, he mentioned earning freedom. He wrote a book report about earning freedom because I read it and you put it on Prison Professor Talent. So that's just a snippet of I read a book. Now I'm going to write a book report about how the book will help me in prison or potentially get through transit because I know Michael did it through 26 years. He did the work. Now let's talk about Texarkana. You're in the drug program. Can you spend a couple of minutes? We're covering a lot here. I love it. Give us a couple of minutes on the drug program. I know dudes got the iPhones. They're getting thrown out. What was the experience like at Texarkana? Because I know you got through it pretty smoothly.
Yes, well, when I got there, the program was so backed up because of people were being transferred from
Yep.
programs being shut down. So I had to wait another pretty much almost 5 months to get into the program once I was there. But once inside the program, I think we started with 30 or 35 people in my class. We graduated with 16.
So 35 to 16. So people presume, some presume, the judge recommended it. It's in my PSR. Those are good things. You get into the program, they're just not going to give you a year off your sentence because they like you. That's a big dropout rate, in my opinion.
Absolutely. And they always say RDAP is no free lunch. I personally, to me, it was one of the best programs I've ever taken in my life. I really feel like it had transformative powers over me, over the way I thought. And it was a really, really, really good program. But guys dropped out, guys were kicked out. You're held to a higher standard than the program. So yes, you live in a different area of the prison. But you are held to a higher standard. There's very little room for error because you are getting a year off your sentence. And so they're not going to tolerate any type of mischief or breaking the rules. And so you're always, even outside of the program, you're being watched. And everything you do is being detailed by staff and by people that are in the program with you.
So you complete the drug program. How quickly after you completed the drug program were you released to the halfway house?
Within 3 days.
Talk about that. So think about that for everyone listening, right? He endured the transit, went to a prison further from his home. They closed the program 10 hours from his home, ends up at Texarkana. He waits to get in, he completes it. Do you think by virtue of your adjustment, avoiding problems, really leading an RDAP, being that, okay, now you complete it, you're eligible? Do you feel a result of that work, your case manager rewarded you and said, okay, you're going home?
Yes, starting the last phase of the program, when you're in RDAP, they definitely reward you. They basically they really tell you when you're gonna as soon as you graduate, they're incentivized to get you out of there. And so but I've seen the counter effect where a guy got kicked out of the program, right? Guys get kicked out of the program for things and end up staying there a lot longer, just because of the case managers don't like dealing with that situation either.
So we like to say a prison sentence may be fixed, but your release date is negotiable. Last week, someone called our team. They got a 30-month sentence. And I said, what is success for you? I want to get home as quickly as possible. Well, how do you do that? I'm not sure. The same conversation with Glenn. You create a plan, you hold yourself accountable, you grow it, you share it, you avoid problems and build, you become extraordinary. And just like that, you complete the program. He didn't have to ask to go home. They're sending him home. Before we go into the transition home, I know you had your gym business. Uh, were you contributing to that business just through your prison professor talent blogs, through visitation? I know you didn't have any disciplinary infractions, but I know you were vested in what your team was doing.
Yes, definitely through email communication, through writing manuscripts back to my wife, which took them to the business. Most definitely, I had to, and just through the prison professor's website, the blogs, people were able to again just people would always say, man, I feel like I'm doing this time with you because they were following the journey. People would tell me, man, we love reading your blogs, like keep writing. We love seeing what you're doing. You're inspiring. It's motivating me to know you're in that situation, but you're still finding the enthusiasm, the courage to move forward and to continue to make progress. So, it was a mutual feeding of back and forth that people that were with me, my family and true friends, it really made a difference.
So, to everyone watching, Prison Professor Talent is a site that the Prison Professor Charitable Corporation maintains, and it allows you to document your journey through prison at no cost to you. You can create content, you can post it. We've had case managers from prisons across the country on our webinars. One from Yankton said, I encourage people in the prison to build their talent profile. I follow what they write. So you can share that URL with your judge if you're seeking a compassionate release or an earlier release. You can share it with your probation officer who's going to determine how much liberty you'll have on the other side. Certainly share it with your case manager. So talent is something we encourage you to create and pursue. And as Glenn said, it keeps your family vested and involved. They can track your journey, they can track your progress. So please create through talent. I'll put up a link. Let's talk about transitioning home. So how much time in the halfway house did you end up getting?
4 months in the halfway house.
So because you were already in prison for a while with the Beaumont issue and then transferring in 5 months waiting to get in, and then you get one full year off for completing the drug program, right?
Yes.
So as soon as you're done, they release you within 3 days. So on a 4 year sentence, how much time did you end up serving inside?
Inside 18 months.
So I'll tell all of you, Glenn would have actually served less time, right? Had it not been for going to a prison and then they immediately close RDAP and then going to a prison where he had to wait 5 months to get in. There's a chance that on a 48-month sentence without these complexities, Glenn, that you could have served, 12 or 13 months potentially.
Yes. 100%. That's right.
Right. So that's the way it goes. But you look, no complaining, no what if, you didn't hear anything complaining about transit, about Beaumont. This is part of the journey. And I think learning from Michael and reading Earning Freedom gives you a sense of what other people have gone through. If they did it, so can I. So no complaining here, just accepting and moving on, which is excellent. Let's go talk about the halfway house and now to home confinement. How was that experience for you in Arkansas?
I mean, the halfway house was, it was also, the halfway house was interesting because it's a very kind of intense environment because you're in there with not just people from camps, but from all security levels, right?
Yes.
And so the environment, the case managers there, the staff, they're a lot more serious. I took a lot more serious in Arkansas just because of I think of what they deal with. But I will say, because of my conduct inside prison, because of what I've done inside prison that was documented, I only spent 2 weeks in the halfway house before I was allowed to go home to home confinement. So my time there was shortened because of what I'd done.
So the upside of the downside of serving a little longer in prison was the upside of getting out of the halfway house a little longer because you'd served a little bit more time. And
Right.
also, I think they rewarded you by getting you to home confinement more quickly. Can we talk about, as we wrap up this video, your business? I'd love to hear about your gym. I love the Instagram stuff, the kids punching. Can you talk about your gym and just how it's growing and the impact that it's having on your community and you as you continue to build
Absolutely.
after prison?
Yeah, so it's very inspirational to me because we've been in major moves. Boxing and fitness has been open for now 6 years, and it's been a staple in our community for youth, for adolescents, for adults, and even with me going to prison when I was in prison, this sweatshirt shows Major Grace Moves Foundation, which is a foundation that we started. I birthed that idea while in prison and wrote the curriculum for it while in prison, and we launched it when I came out. We're now a 501(c) approved charitable organization. But the whole purpose behind the foundation for the gym was to not turn any kids away that wanted to come and learn boxing and fitness, and also learn cognitive skills for the classroom as well. And so now through donations and getting grants we hope to receive, we'll be able to fulfill the obligation for our community. And but the gym, since I've been home, it's been thriving. I mean, it's been we're at all-time high memberships. Things are going really well on an uptick, a nice uptick.
Glenn, two more questions. How can people follow your gym? One, and two, give some advice to a defendant just been indicted. Maybe they're facing a sentencing. They've been sentenced. They're going to prison. Offer some advice to them as they're going through what is a very difficult process.
Absolutely. So number one, the gym is Major Moves Boxing. That's on Instagram. That's on Facebook. On all the social media handles. And as far as advice, I would just say that if you are facing an indictment, if you are dealing with the unforeseen circumstance of going to federal prison, just start early. It's overwhelming. It causes anxiety. It can cause fear. But I found that every step that I took moving forward with an actionable step, and one thing I learned, like with you guys, like Justin and Michael, I adopted very quickly that I didn't know anything about this system, right? The federal prison system. And so I said to myself, I had to surround myself with a team that knew this industry inside out. And so by aligning myself with you guys really made the process easier as far as from formulating a plan and then working that. And so I would just advise anybody, if you are in a situation, start early, get a good team around you, do the work, don't run from it, face it head on. You can't bury it under a rock. If you're going through it, you're going through it. But any step you take forward to that can lead to a better outcome is the best way to do it. And just get ahead of it.
I couldn't have said it any better, my friend. Thank you for sharing your expertise and your story with our community today and for always attending our webinars and being willing to speak with people in our community who have questions. So I'm grateful to know you, to be your friend. Thank you again for contributing.
All right, thank you. Likewise. Anytime.